Hi everybody, welcome to our LEAP webinar, Legend to Volunteering, where you, the legend, get to learn the legend or the key to being a great volunteer. I'm Jed Walker. The live webinar was assisted by Emily Sparks. We've stripped out a lot of the chat and polls and we hope you enjoy it. Let's get into it. To begin with, I'll just go over the outcomes for the session today. First of all, duty of care. Now I'm going to refer to the people you work with as clients. You may not call them clients in your volunteer work, but that's a pretty common terminology across a lot of areas where people volunteer. Your duty of care will mainly apply to the clients that you're working with. So it's about making sure they don't come to harm at the time you're working with them. Work health and safety is an area where duty of care applies by law. Next, volunteer rights and responsibilities. Rights are things that you as a volunteer are entitled to, such as to have a safe workplace, to have breaks, to have a statement about what your duties are supposed to be. Your responsibilities are your obligations, such as being on time and following instructions that form part of your duties. The next outcome is to know what policies and procedures are. Policies and procedures describe things like the agreed way to do certain tasks, things you should and should not do, emergency procedures, and so on. Policies and procedures also contain the Code of Conduct, which we'll be looking at. Work health and safety, commonly called WH&S, is about your responsibility to play your part in keeping everybody in the organisation safe from harm. And finally, to understand professional boundaries. Professional boundaries refers to lines that would not normally be crossed by staff or volunteers in an organisation. There are limits to our roles, and we need to be mindful of what might happen if we step outside those limits. For example, if we provide Meals on Wheels, it would probably not be okay to go into somebody's house and set the table for them. Okay, so let's begin with duty of care. Duty of care is a legal obligation. It applies to both your organisations to protect you and keep you safe from harm, and your duty of care to clients that you see. You need to protect them from harm when you are with them. Your clients, the people you see, do not have a duty of care towards you. They don't have to protect you. Obviously, they can't deliberately harm you. That would be a crime. But they're not required to take special care of you. You need to take special care of them. So part of your organisation's duty of care is to provide you with instructions, information, and training. This helps to keep clients safe because you will know how to work safely. For example, if you use personal protective equipment, PPE, you should be provided with instructions about how to use it properly. So your organisation has a duty of care towards you, and you have a duty of care towards your clients. We can see this with something like infection control. You should be working with clean hands, and you should be provided with the means to get those hands clean. Hand sanitizer or soap. Okay, the wagon wheel. This is our little metaphor for the rest of the session. I live in the Blue Mountains, and I pity the people and the horses who bumped over the rutted tracks that are now the Great Western Highway. Also in the Blue Mountains are coachwood forests. Coachwood trees are named because they were used to make the wheels of the coach. Have a good look at the wheels of this heavy old wagon. Imagine what would happen if a few of the spokes were missing. Not good, right? The wagon would collapse. So we need all the spokes of the wheel intact for the wagon to move forward nicely. And in the same way, we need our duty of care in place. And next, we're going to look at rights and responsibilities in a little bit more detail. So your rights, as we mentioned, are things that you are entitled to and should actually get when you're acting in your role as a volunteer. Your obligations, on the other hand, are the responsibilities you have as a volunteer. As we mentioned, these are often related to your duty of care. So the first right we'll look at is a clear position description. You need to know what you're signing up for. You should be told what the organisation does and what you are expected to do within it. Ideally, you'll get the opportunity to negotiate your duties. If you really hate data entry and love setting up events, try and get yourself a role setting up events, doing what you prefer. Organisations that involve volunteers want to hang on to them, so they want them to be happy. Okay, support and supervision. Now, supervision in this sense isn't about being told what to do. It's about being supported by having regular discussions about your volunteer work with a more experienced person. This could be a more experienced volunteer. Usually it's a manager, member of staff. Now, this could be for simply learning how to do the task correctly, such as folding up clothes or putting them on a hanger, or it could be for more serious things. Some roles can cause volunteers to become upset or angry or frustrated or just uncertain of what to do next. For instance, if you were in palliative care or in state emergency services, you might see some pretty confronting stuff and deal with some difficult feelings. And for these circumstances, we might need someone to listen to us and to guide us. You may even be referred outside the organisation to specialised counselling. For example, if you get traumatised by something that happens while you're volunteering. Orientation and training. Now, you shouldn't just get thrown in the deep end with volunteering. You should get shown around and given some basic instructions and help to get started. We at LEAP provide not only this sort of training, but face-to-face training also, and this is generally a right that you have as a volunteer. The training that you're doing now is general type training for all volunteers, and some organisations offer specialised training as well, such as for aged care. You have a right to have your health and safety protected. We'll get into this in a bit more depth shortly when we look at work health and safety. The service you volunteer for has to take reasonable steps to protect you from harm. And clearly for more dangerous duties, you would be provided with PPE, personal protective equipment. Okay, on to your responsibilities now. Again, you can see this sort of thing is closely related to your duty of care, to protect others from harm. Mopping up a spill is a fairly obvious one, but it would also include warning people of danger, not bullying people, and reporting risks of harm to others. You need to be on the lookout for risks to yourself, to staff, volunteers, clients of course, and in the actual workplace, the public. So if you worked in an op shop, for instance, then the public would be someone you'd have to look out for risks for as well. If you take clients out into the world in public places, you've only got a duty of care to those clients that are under your care at the time. Okay, being punctual and reliable. In the Australian workplace, it shows respect to turn up when and where you are expected. Not to be late, and if you are going to be late, call and let people know. If you know that you can't attend a shift, don't wait till the same day, if at all possible, to let the organisation know. Let them know as soon as you know you're not going to be able to make it. Okay, the wagon wheel turns once more. What have we got now? Policies and procedures. So these are often kept in a big folder, or more often these days in a computer file, and you need to be aware of some of the things that are in there. There'll be some instructions and guidelines that apply to volunteers. One such thing is the code of conduct. To illustrate this, coming up we have a scenario involving two young women in a cafe having a talk. So here we go. One volunteer says to the other, "I don't like the way this service treats its volunteers. I don't even think it's a good service overall, and I hate our manager. Now note this is in a public place, other people will be able to hear, and it's not a very good depiction of the service. They are most likely in breach of some of the parts of the Code of Conduct. Let's see if we can figure out what some of these are. Now, this part of the presentation has some missing words, and I'll give you a moment or two to see if you can figure out what the missing word is, and then I'll tell you. Okay, this one is support the aims of the organisation. The next one, represent the organisation in a positive way. Then we have not to be publicly critical of fellow staff or bring disrepute on the organisation. And finally, not discuss confidential issues of the organisation with people outside of the organisation. So whether the other young woman is a volunteer from the same organisation or not, it's easily possible that someone sitting nearby could hear the conversation. Okay, another scenario for our policies and procedures consideration. A volunteer is taking an older woman shopping, and the old woman says, "Thank you, dear, for helping me. How about I give you $20 and you can buy yourself a little something?" Again, this is a code of conduct issue. The first thing to note here is the definition of volunteering itself. We volunteer for reasons other than monetary payment. Volunteers don't get paid for what they do in their role. If they did, it wouldn't be considered volunteering. There will often be a policy, again, probably in the Code of Conduct, about accepting donations. Some services do accept a small amount from a client, but it doesn't go to the volunteer. A danger of gifts is that a client with dementia, for example, might forget they gave you something of theirs and then get upset because you have it. Some rules allow volunteers to accept, say, a small handmade gift. It depends on the code of conduct you're working under. Make sure you are familiar with it. Otherwise, just politely refuse to accept the donation unless your organisation does accept donations, and these may go towards, for example, a celebration at the end of the year for volunteers. And again, the wheel turns, this time to work health and safety. You'll note from the sign of the wagon that things have suddenly got a lot more dangerous. However, when we think of work health and safety, it's not just sudden accidents or explosions that we need to worry about. A lot of days off because of injury in the workplace are actually caused by mental stress. This sort of stress can develop slowly over time. Work health and safety is a legal issue, and you do have some legal responsibilities within it. For example, to take care of your own health and safety, have a think about what you might need to do. What might this involve? Making sure that you yourself don't get injured or harmed in some way. Here's some ideas. Don't be affected by alcohol or drugs. Follow the instructions provided to make the task safe. Wear personal protective equipment. And say no to any task that you think is unsafe for you to do. A hazard is anything that has the potential to cause injury, harm, or illness. We talk about 4 types of hazards. The first one is people, yourself and others. Small people, like this one, sick and contagious people, drunk people, angry or violent people. People can be a hazard, a risk of harm. So, that's the first type of hazard, people. They can be a risk to you, you can be a risk to them. The next type is places. Places such as a place of a broken step, a place where there's filth and squalor, pets that are dangerous, pests that carry disease. Have a look around yourself right now in the room you're in. Is there anything you could trip over? Is there a bookcase a child could pull down on top of themselves? Is there poor light that could strain your eyes? Or perhaps you have a neighbour with a dog that doesn't stop barking, or they use power tools all the time, or practice their karaoke, and the noise is really starting to get you down. The third thing is equipment. Equipment needs to be safe, therefore it needs to be checked and maintained. Faults need to be reported. Faulty equipment needs to be removed and fixed or got rid of. Inappropriate equipment, like the office chair this man is using, should also be replaced. Next up we have tasks. Take a look at these instructions. As you can see, they relate to specific tasks, in this case manual tasks. If they're not done properly, they can cause injury, and in fact, many nurses have injuries from moving patients the wrong way. All tasks that have a risk of harm are hazardous and should come with instructions. To keep yourself safe and comply with WH&S law, you should follow these instructions. Okay, here's a little quiz. Identifying hazards. What type of hazard is this? Now you can't type the correct letter into the chat, but you can think in your own head. Is it A, people, B, places, C, equipment, or D, tasks? The correct answer is B, places. Next one, note there are instructions for this one. That should give you a clue as to whether it's A, people, B, places, C, equipment, or D, tasks. And the correct answer here is D, tasks. Remember, you've got to follow those instructions. Otherwise, your organisation might not get their insurance if you injure yourself, and you'll be liable for the damages yourself. Finally, this one, which would appear to be a hazard, especially for small fingers. A, people, B, places, C, equipment, or D, tasks. And hopefully you guessed C, equipment. Okay, to be a risk thinker, that's what we've got to be in our environment. We see all these things, babies and fans and rats, and we've got to think to ourselves, what could happen if I did nothing about this? Remember, it's your responsibility to do something. So here's some strategies of what to do about hazards that you see. The first thing to do is isolate people from the risk. And we know all about this when there's nasty viruses around, don't we? We isolate in our houses. This is taking the people away from the risk. This is actually a rather unusual strategy. Usually we take the risk away from the people. We remove the risk. We isolate the risk from the people. In the case of a nasty virus, however, we've been taking the people away from the risk and isolating them. And of course, it's much more inconvenient for individuals and society as a whole. In this case, we are again going to isolate the person from the risk, remove the little person, and we're going to do something about that cord and make it safer. This is called an engineering solution. Usually, however, we isolate the risk from the person. So this guy's thinking, what do I do? I'll put up a sign that'll stop people going near the risk. It will separate them. So once the risk is isolated and people have been warned about it, it can then be reported so that someone can get around to fixing it. This woman here is thinking about the rat in the filthy, squalid premises, and it would be an idea to isolate people from it and then eliminate the risk by cleaning it up. Now, if you can quickly and safely do something about the risk, you should. However, if the hazard is one that could put you at risk, or there's contractors, cleaners and so on who are going to fix it up anyway, then as long as people are warned and the people are isolated from the risk, then the risk can be reported and arrangements can be made to have someone come along and clean it up. Okay, now watch what happens with this magical fan. Look, it's got a guard on it. That's maybe not good enough though for tiny fingers. Perhaps we should get rid of the fan altogether, eliminate it, or we could get another fan. That's called substituting the hazard. However, the hazard is controlled, whether it's by elimination, isolation, substitution, engineering, we need to report serious risks, which is pretty much anything more than something that could cause an injury requiring more than a band-aid. A near miss is when someone comes close, very close, to getting hurt, and that should be reported too. It shows there was a hazard there and it could have injured someone who came close to it. Forms for reporting near misses, hazards, and of course actual injuries should be with the policies and procedures. And for this session, the final turn of the wheel really is boundaries. We look at physical, emotional, relational, and something that we've pretty much covered in a way in this whole presentation, professional boundaries. Physical boundaries we're pretty well familiar with. They're fences and walls and they keep people out. Emotional boundaries, a bit more subtle, when people impose their values on us. So this could be in the form of harassment or bullying, getting into our personal space, uninvited touch, and we'll notice we get some emotional reaction to that and we want to say, no, stop it, I don't like it. Relational boundaries are about sticking to our role. Here the young man's asking the doctor to come to his birthday party, and the doctor knows that his role is to examine the boy and not to go to his birthday party. It's not a friend relationship, it's a doctor relationship. So there's almost an overlap between relational and professional boundaries. Here is the young woman from Meals on Wheels delivering the meal, and the lady might want to have a chat, and the young woman might have time to do that, but there's probably limits to that depending on her schedule. She wouldn't, I would imagine, go into the lady's house. That would be outside of her role. And as a general rule, we shouldn't go into people's houses unless it is officially part of our role or some arrangements have been made to do so. That's a boundary that, if we don't usually go into someone's place, we tend not to cross. Another professional boundary, if someone needs professional counselling, we have to keep within our skill set. We shouldn't be trying to help, for example, someone with serious trauma. They need professional help for that, and we need to recognise our limitations. Indeed, for anything that we're doing in volunteering, there are limitations that we have to be aware of, and we have to have some way of saying no, such as simply, I don't feel comfortable doing that, sorry. There are other professional boundaries that should be spokes of our wheel. They are things like dress code, privacy and confidentiality, and they should appear ideally in the policy and procedures manual, some guidelines around them. Okay, that brings us to the end of our Legend to Volunteering presentation. Hope you enjoyed it. Please fill out an evaluation. That'll be in the link that was emailed to you for registration. And please keep an eye on our website for further trainings, both webinar and, before too long, face-to-face. Thank you.